Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. Happy 2023. It's the first episode of season, what is this, 6 now? 5? Another episode of the podcast, episode 213, and a lot to get into as we're going to be talking a little bit about the Colts. We're going to be talking about what their offseason looks like as the season mercifully is finally over. Also, it is Super Wild Card weekend, so we're going to get into our picks for the NFL playoffs as well as the regular season is over, and now we start looking at football's second season. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're really excited to get into it. B. Scott, though, we had a good break. You got to see the FCS championship this past weekend, so you got to see some football live and in person, and both championship games, both the one you saw in person and the one last night, were not very good. As far as
ours was better.
Well, right,
ours
yes,
was a lot
more
better.
competitive for sure.
Like the FCS championship game, you never yes, South Dakota State won by a wide margin, but you never felt like North Dakota State was ever out of it. You always had that thought in the back of your mind, like something's going to happen here, and North Dakota State's going to just come roaring back. And it looked like they were going to in the second quarter when they had a big touchdown, and then they followed it up by with a miscue on the kickoff from South Dakota State and pinning South Dakota State basically on the 1 yard line. And there was tons of momentum, but South Dakota State was the better team all year. That was a team that had one loss, and it was to Iowa. Yeah. The final score, I think, of that game, wasn't it like 9-3? It was
there was two safeties or something like that. It was
yes,
weird.
That's right. Yeah, it was a very ugly game, but for that to be your only loss all season, that is really impressive. And I mean, throughout the entire playoffs, South Dakota State had a margin of victory of over 21. I think actually it was 28 points per game. So that defense was number one in the country in the FCS. The offense was clicking. Their quarterback is a redshirt sophomore. They're going to be back. And what's funny is that this was their second appearance in the FCS title game. And this is their first Division I championship across any sport in school history. We're seeing that's a big common theme here recently, is schools winning their very first national championship of any sport in Division I here recently, especially with the championships I've been on, like baseball. Yeah. I've seen that twice now, and now with the FCS. So I guess if you want to win a championship for the very first time or have your school again in school history, you really hope that I'm. I
was gonna say that's a good advertisement for you. Be like, hey, look, I've got a good track record. Get me some good seats, even if I'm not calling it.
I'm just a lucky charm.
Exactly. So like, if there's a team like in the Final Four this year that is in there for the first time, just be like, all right, you know what? Get me down there. I will bring your team.
I will be in Dallas. I will be in Dallas for the women's Final Four.
There you go. So whoever. I don't even know if there's a school. If there's a school that's in the tournament that's never won before, which I mean, obviously there's going to be several. I'm going to do my best to have a bracket that's like all first time winners, just to make sure I have some sort of shot. But going from talk of championship conversations to one that is not very close to a championship conversation.
Opposite of a championship conversation.
Yes, total opposite of a championship conversation, and that is, of course, the Indianapolis Colts, who solidified their fourth pick in the 2023 draft. They will be picking fourth coming up this April. Looking at this game this past weekend, it was really wild. I was glad that we saw what I like to call a Craig Crash special, which is, as far as the game goes, it started off bad. You weren't expecting a whole lot. Then the Colts started playing well. You're like, all right, cool. I'm okay with the win here. And then they just decided at the end to just not pull it off, or more or less the Texans deciding they don't want the first pick. It started off, Texans get out to a 10-0 lead after the Brandon Cooks touchdown catch and a fumble on the ensuing kickoff that gives Houston the ball in Colts territory. Sam Ehlinger then connects with Michael Pittman to make it 10-7. A pick six from the Texans makes it 17-7 Houston at the half. In the second half, the teams trade scores in the third quarter. Zach Moss, who had a really great game, his coming out party, 15 yards on the touchdown run to get the Colts within 3. The lead goes back up to 10 when Davis Mills finds Jordan Atkins for a 19-yard score. Then Ronnie McLeod has a pick six to get the Colts back within a field goal. Then a Mo Alley Cox touchdown gives the Colts a 28-24 lead with 10 minutes to play in the fourth. Down 7 with less than a minute to play, Houston decides they don't want the first pick as Davis Mills throws a Hail Mary. It's answered by Jordan Akins from 30 yards out. They go for 2 and convert. The Texans win 32-31. The Colts finish 4-12-1 on the season, losing 7 straight in the year. Sam Ehlinger goes 23 for 35, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Not awful, not great, but not awful.
No, honestly, it's kind of interesting. I mean, yes, it's against the Texans, but this is the most like with it the offense has seemed here in the last several weeks. Like, yeah, he threw 2 interceptions, but they put points up on the board. They moved the ball, and it just seems like it always comes back to Sam Ehlinger to me. Like, he just seems like that quarterback on the team right now that is the most capable of leading a drive, leading the team just in a game. It just, I don't know. I don't feel like he's ever been given a fair shake to solidify himself. I mean, obviously, is he the quarterback of the future? No, no. I mean, there's guys out there that are better, but let's look at, if you're going to look at bright spots for this team, I have to say Sam Ehlinger is one of them, and that's a guy that I would want to keep around on the roster because if something does happen to your starter, I feel like he's a better option to fall back on.
Yeah. When you say,
I don't know, maybe it's just me because I like Sam Ehlinger coming out of college. I thought he was a good player. I like those types of quarterbacks that, yeah, they don't put up crazy numbers, but they play solid. I've always liked those types, obviously.
well, and I mean, you say, it's just against the Texans, but I mean, this is the same Texans team that was in it against the Chiefs, in it against the Cowboys. Like they've played well, so it's not like they beat the Titans, even though the Titans completely fell off the wagon at the
Fell
end.
apart.
Yeah, like so. I mean, to have those kind of numbers, and like you said, not not great, but not awful as well. So I mean, when's the last time, aside from the Vikings game, which was really mostly the defense and special teams, scoring those 30 points? I mean, I can't remember the last time the offense itself was.
The Chiefs.
You're right. So you'd have to.
I would say the Chiefs game.
Well, no, they scored.
Oh,
they had 34, I think, against the Jaguars in their win over the Jaguars at home.
The no, the one win Jeff Saturday got as a coach, the Raiders.
They score 30 then.
That's what I don't remember, but the offense at least looked like it knew what it was doing.
But that's what I'm saying. Is the last time they scored 30 points was a while ago. But regardless, it's been a long time, been several weeks, months since we've seen the offense look as good as it did. Also, bright spot. I mean, we love what Nyheim Hines did, for Buffalo, lifting them up in this situation they've been going through. But the other part of that trade, Zach Moss, obviously less significant, but showing off a good game. I've been skeptical of that trade really until this past weekend. He has 18 carries, 114 yards, and a touchdown. So at least a bright spot. Maybe him and a healthy Jonathan Taylor will be another bright spot for the Colts coming up next year.
Also, got to give a shout out to Colts rookie safety Rodney Thomas.
Yeah.
What a cool story. Him being able to get that big interception in the game. Being high school teammates with Damar Hamlin and, running over instead of running to the end zone to do the regular celebration, they ran to the 3 and posed there. That was outlined in red. That was really cool. I didn't see the game. Obviously I was working, but I saw that highlight, and one highlight I need explained to me. I got a tweet that I get random notifications on Twitter sometimes. And this one was one. It was, the Colts will most likely be penalized for this or fined for this. And it was a video of a play where it looked like an offensive lineman for the Colts came up behind Zach Moss and looked like he punched the ball out on a Zach Moss fumble.
Oh, okay. So the fumble. So Houston scores the first touchdown of the game. On the ensuing kickoff, a
Okay, it
Colts.
was a kickoff.
Yeah. So
Is that yeah? I
on a,
didn't see the full I didn't see the full play. It just was that
yeah,
very brief
on
little
the
clip.
return, I don't know what I mean, it didn't look intentional. It just looked like basically what we can transition to as far as one word to describe the Colts season. It was just embarrassing. It was just an embarrassing moment where at least that's what it looked like for me. It didn't look intentional by any stretch.
Okay.
Basically, the Colts player. I mean, you see the replay. You've seen the replay of it. It just basically comes over. I don't know what he's doing. But it
It
doesn't.
looks like he's like trying to tackle him or help him go down. It was
Yeah,
so
I don't know. It
weird.
was weird. Like, but
Like,
I didn't. It didn't appear to me like it was intentional. He does punch the ball out. It sets up Houston. But it's also one of those things like, okay, if Colts players were gonna be that blatant about like trying to
we
lose,
wouldn't have we
right?
wouldn't have scored as many points as we did.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
There was
So
the Colts were down 17-7 and looked like they could have been down worse at points in that first half. So I mean, and they still came back and probably should have won. But so yeah, I didn't see that as intentional at all. So if they get fined for that, it's silly. But yeah, definitely,
mm,
definitely, just a bad moment. And yeah, one of the things I wanted to talk about, just kind of to wrap up the season, is one word to describe the Colts season. And like I said, for me, it's embarrassing. I mean, I look, it's well, my first football memories are from the Peyton Manning era. But I will say with confidence that this may be the most embarrassing Colts season since the team came to the Circle City. I mean, the failed Matt Ryan experiment, the in-season quarterback carousel, firing Frank Reich midseason, firing offensive coordinator Marcus Brady before that, hiring an interim head coach with no coaching experience, losing 7 straight to end the year. Which I mean, I love Jeff Saturday, but obviously, in my opinion, has shown he's not the guy. Allowing the largest comeback in league history against the Vikings, allowing 30 plus in the fourth quarter against Dallas. And one thing, I've talked with several people about this. I've talked to my parents about this, as well. Like, one thing that Jeff Saturday had going for him was his ability to motivate. And this is a Colts team
mm.
down the stretch that did not look like they were playing for any sort of purpose. It's not like, they at bare minimum, with all of the flack that the Colts organization got for hiring Jeff Saturday, the one thing this Colts team had to play for is like, let's rally around this guy. It's been a rough year. Let's rally around this guy who's gotten so much crap, so much flack for really no reason. I mean, it's not his fault that Jim Irsay hired him. He didn't throw his hat in the ring to be the interim head coach, and yet he got so much flack and bad press for it. Let's rally around this guy. Maybe that's what they had going in that first week against the Raiders, but since then, they've looked like they're just kind of going through the motions, and so that I think is telling. The fact that the Colts, released Rodrigo Blankenship after the game-winning missed field goal in Week 1. I mean, it just was a year that I've just not seen this much dysfunction. I mean, even in the suck for luck season, there was at least something to hang your hat on. There was some
Well, they in the suck for luck season, they almost didn't suck at the end.
right.
When they decided that no, we're not going to go with an old man and Kerry Collins, and Curtis Painter's not the answer. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, we got this other guy named Dan Orlovsky. Let's give him a shot. And Dan Orlovsky comes out and like looked legit.
Yeah.
Him and Reggie Wayne were like, they tore apart the Texans in one of the games, and it was like, okay, guys, let's slow it down a bit because it was a tight battle. I remember with Washington. Actually, we tied with Washington. That was because in that draft, it was every other round the Colts had the first pick of each round. So like the Colts picked second in the second round that year, and Washington picked first in the second round. But because of some kind of head-to-head stuff, we were able to land the number 1 overall pick.
Well, remember,
So
the only reason they were second was because they traded with the Rams.
that's right. Yeah. So the Rams, I think, picked first in the. It was the year though the Colts did pick like every other round. They had the second pick of the start of that round.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
But yeah,
They almost lost out on all of it.
well, yeah, and even in the year that like Jacoby Brissett, the first year Jacoby Brissett was thrown into things. I mean, that was the year that started out with Scott Tolzien getting his doors kicked in against the Rams. Like Like
Or
it
Chargers?
was against
It
the
was the
Rams. It was the
Chargers.
Rams.
It was
I
Rams?
guarantee you it was. Yeah, it was. It
Okay.
was like
Oh, never
46.
mind.
It was
Yeah,
46
I'm
to
thinking
7.
Jonathan Taylor's first season
No. Yeah,
when
that
Jacoby
was.
Brissett was the
Yeah, that
quarterback
was the
then
second.
too.
That was the second year of.
Second Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah. So yeah, I
So
mean,
yeah,
there have been other years where the Colts have looked equally, like the on-field product has been equally as bad, but this is the one time, to kind of tie a bow on the argument here. The one time kind of that they've looked that not only have they looked this bad, the on-field product has been this awful, but also all the off-field stuff, all the things surrounding them was also equally as bad.
yeah. The one word I guess I would describe this season as is frustrating, because there were so much high expectations coming into this season, and a lot of that is you got to put on the local press a little bit, because there were glaring red flags, which is also makes it frustrating because everybody was sitting there saying the Colts don't have the wide receivers to help this team. The Colts don't have the depth at offensive line to help this team. And the Colts don't have, like, it was all these different pieces on offense that people were screaming from the rooftops, and Chris Ballard was like, hey, I'm sticking to my strategy. I think I'm doing a great job. No, we don't need more skill positions. We don't need to draft higher at those positions. We don't need to oversign or pay money for those positions. We're okay. I love our wide receivers room. And then they come out and this happens. And it's like, it's one of those, like, we told you, everybody was telling you. None of us are professional GMs, but we could sit on the outside and go, look, these are your areas of need. Why aren't you attacking them? What's going on? Why do you feel like drafting somebody in the 6th round is going to help this team? Like, you have a wide receiver room with one or two talented players, and the rest of them are guys that would be on practice squads elsewhere. Like, what are we missing that you are seeing? Because clearly there's something that you see that nobody else sees, and now it was proven. So it's frustrating because everybody saw the holes, and Ballard was just too, I don't know, stubborn, I guess, or too stuck in his ways.
Yeah.
And then for him to come out today and be like, I failed, but I want another chance. It's like, I get it. He did say something along the lines of, in this day and age, if you fail, you get kicked out. But why can't this be a learning moment to help me reach my highest heights? I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, he's
never been a GM before, so he's got to learn somehow.
right, and I think he's built up. I mean, because that's the thing too. I know there's a lot of people that are saying fire Ballard, and I'm not necessarily opposed to that. Like, there would definitely be, there would definitely
what
be,
good does it do?
There would definitely be like cause. Like, it's not like the Colts, had one bad season and are like, okay, we're kicking him to the curb. Like, no, it's been, the inability to shift your goals. It's been, hey, I'm so worried about getting an albatross contract, in which, I mean, I've seen people, not necessarily that I agree with them, but I've seen people calling Quentin Nelson's contract an albatross with how he played this season. So, like, you're so worried about not having.
I got my opinions on that.
Oh yeah.
But... Well, just real quick, I don't think Quentin Nelson's play was all that bad. I think he was trying. It looks bad because he was trying to do the job of two guys. He was trying to block his assignments and then also clean up the mess from the left tackle as well.
Yeah.
So because of that, he's not Superman. It's not, he can't do it all. So I think he was trying to do too much, and that caused it to look like he had a really bad season.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that we're gonna use this to kind of pivot on to the Colts' early season outlook. I know we talked about this a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, but now the picture is a little bit more clear, and so I want to revisit this topic, especially at the Colts, or at the quarterback position, and talking about Ballard. I also want to say before we get underway here that that articles from Horseshoe Heroes and Pro Football Rumors have said that Chris Ballard is likely returning to Indy this season. Irsay has kind of put his stamp on him as well, going in.
But he wouldn't have had a end of the season press conference
Right,
today. He
exactly.
wouldn't have gotten to that
So
point if he wasn't returning.
right. So and yeah, I think what I was gonna say too earlier is that like I think he's had a lot of solid drafts. He's made a lot of solid moves where I think he's built up the equity. It's just now that equity is wearing thin. So we'll see how this year he really needs to go out and go.
Well, and then also look at it. He was really dealt a pretty bad hand early on
Yeah.
with the sudden retirement of Andrew Luck.
Right, but I also
That
think
whole
his you can make the argument of it's not argument, it's basically fact that he was set back years with the retirement of Andrew Luck, but at the same time his moves after that, especially here recently, have not done him any favors in getting out of that hole.
or maybe this was the long game all along. He knew Matt Ryan was washed up, brought him in, and he knew that this was going to be a better
The only way we could get
QB
a first,
class.
the only way we could get a higher pick is if he brought in a washed-up
Maybe
quarterback.
he's playing chess while we're all sitting around playing checkers.
Reverse it. We're playing checkers while he's playing chess.
I know. I said it in a.
I didn't. Sorry, I didn't realize.
I said maybe he's playing chess while we're all sitting
okay.
around playing checkers.
Never mind. I'm the problem. It's me. as the Taylor Swift
Yeah,
song goes.
instead of saying we're playing checkers while he's playing chess, I just said
okay.
Yeah,
I was like, wait a minute, hold on. But yeah, so looking at this offseason, I kind of wanted to throw this out here. What would be in our opinion, would be the dream head coach quarterback situation going into the 2023 season? For me, first, as much as I want to look at quarterback first, obviously the first domino to fall is who the Colts get for head coach. First and foremost, Jim Harbaugh should be the only retread the Colts pursue. I still think it's unlikely that they get him, although the more I hear about stuff, the more I think it's more of a possibility. I don't think ultimately it happens, but because of course, on the one hand, you have a team, the Colts are a team with a top 4 pick, with a familiar team with a team you're familiar with. That's got to be tantalizing for a guy like Harbaugh. But on the other hand, if he doesn't get the perfect situation, he can go back to Michigan, where he's got a college football playoff contender, a team that in the way too early, top 25 that ESPN released was number 3. Yeah, so they're going to be high up there again. The Colts should still look into it, but I also don't think they should exhaust all their resources, and I don't think they should let it keep them from interviewing other quality candidates. I've seen others like Leslie Frazier and Jim Caldwell thrown out there, and that for me...
Why bring back Jim Caldwell?
Right, exactly.
That failed the first time.
Those would be worst-case scenarios, in my opinion. The only defensive coordinator I want the Colts to pursue is DeMeco Ryans, the 49ers. San Francisco was first in yards allowed per game and points per game in the regular season. He's young. He's a former player that comes from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree that, oh, by the way, could potentially pluck any, who has an offense that literally now has 3 quarterbacks that you would consider viable starters in Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Brock Purdy. And, oh, by the way, DeMeco Ryans could pluck some of those offensive guys to make it easier to plug in a Will Levis or Anthony Richardson should the Colts, worst case scenario, miss out on a Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. The best case scenario for me would be for Indy to go with an offensive coordinator who has worked with some of the best quarterback talent in the league: Eric Bieniemy of the Chiefs, Ken Dorsey of the Bills, Brian Callahan of the Bengals. Any of those guys would have me feeling somewhat comfortable with whoever the Colts draft at quarterback this year. My vote would be Ken Dorsey. I give him the slight edge over Brian.
I can get that one.
I give him the slight edge over Brian Callahan, and I don't know how easy Bieniemy would get, so which is why I have him. I have him below Dorsey. I would rather have Bieniemy, but because Bieniemy's kind of always been in conversations for head
There's some
coach.
red flags
Yeah,
there.
so I don't know what's going on there. So that's the only reason why I put Dorsey
Yeah.
ahead. But I think a guy like Ken Dorsey, because the thing is with like a guy like Harbaugh or a guy like Ken Dorsey, that kind of softens the blow of who you might worst case scenario get at the quarterback position. As far as the quarterback position goes, the mock drafts I've been looking at, I will admit it was when I prepared the outline on Sunday, so the Colts weren't locked in at 4, so all the mock drafts had the Colts at 5, but I had one from NBC Sports that has Colts taking Kentucky quarterback Will Levis. There's another one from CBS that has the Colts taking Levis with Stroud still on the board, which big
Oh,
no for that one. And then another one
yeah.
has the Colts taking Stroud at 5, which
Okay.
without anything impeding them. Of the teams ahead of the Colts in the draft, just the Texans are likely to take a quarterback, which bodes well for the Colts. However, that means there are 3 spots in which the Colts could be leapfrogged, or sorry, that'd be 2 spots where the Colts could be leapfrogged. With the Seahawks, which the Seahawks I probably could take off there because after getting the playoffs with Geno, they're probably not going to leapfrog to get a quarterback. But you also have the Raiders, Falcons, Panthers looming with solid to good ammo to potentially move up. Heck, with the picks the Texans acquired from Cleveland, I wouldn't rule them out from doing something crazy to move back up and have a couple of picks. But that's why I think it's important for the Colts to get a head coach with a proven record of developing elite quarterback talent. So that it kind of softens the blow. All this to say, to circle back and say who I think my dream scenario it would be Ken Dorsey with whoever the Colts don't get, whoever the Texans don't get between Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. I think, me personally, I would like to see Ken Dorsey and C.J. Stroud as the two leaders in the organization going forward into 2023.
So yeah, obviously Jim Harbaugh is a dream, and Irsay does like his boys, and apparently Harbaugh is one of his boys. But I don't know. Like watching Harbaugh's offenses at Michigan
Not really featured
isn't super
quarterback. Yeah, they haven't really
or
needed.
the passing game too much. I guess which is it's a good that's okay when you have a running back like Jonathan Taylor ready to go, but you need an offensive line that can handle that. And right now the Colts don't have that. Um I don't think I would rule Jim Harbaugh out just because it is one of those things like I think he would love the Jim Harbaugh would love the attention he would get as being coming back to Indianapolis where he was crowned the comeback kid and being able to help lead this organization, a guy that's in the Ring of Honor, like one of the originals of the Ring of Honor. There's some draw there to that. You do play inside, so you don't have to worry about playing in the elements all the time. Um, so there's credence there. But I'm more in line of let's go out and hire a young guy, somebody younger that can connect with these players. That seems to be the trend. We've seen it, and we've seen it with success throughout the league. Now, the Indy Star did report today that the Colts did request the ability to talk to and interview 4 different coordinators. One of them being Rams defensive coordinator Raheem Morris. He has a retread a little bit. He spent some time as the head coach with the Buccaneers for 3 seasons. There was also Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. He's old. He's the oldest guy on the list, age 50. But the Lions had a pretty good defense this year. The Lions were actually a very surprised team. This isn't the last time you're going to hear about the Lions. And then also Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. He's a younger guy that really kind of helped resurrect Jared Goff's career and turn the Lions into one of the top offenses in the league this year. Trying to see right here, what was the 5th in scoring? They were 3rd in yards and 5th in scoring, despite not having an elite quarterback at the helm. That's what's quoted here in the article. But here comes my candidate that I didn't know about him until now. And well, not until earlier today. But looking at what he's done, kind of exciting. Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's got a lot of connections also to former Colts coaches. He actually spent a couple years with Frank Reich in San Diego. He was an offensive quality control coach under Reich in 2014 and 2015. Then he worked his way up under former Indianapolis Colts coordinator Nick Sirianni, and he's also apparently been requested to interview for the Texans job. But I mean, this guy has helped build an electric Eagles offense that finished second in the league in yards and scoring this season. So he knows how to kind of he's kind of an he's an offensive mind that can really work well. I mean, he is only 37, so he's about my age, a little older than me, but for some reason I just feel like that is the new trend, to go younger, and we have seen that it works. Like I said, I mean, look, Sean McVay, yeah, he's had his ups and his downs out in LA. Kyle Shanahan out there in San Francisco. I mean, it works, and these guys are connecting with the players better, and they also understand that they've seen what changes have been made in football, and they've adapted to those changes, whereas these older guys that just keep getting passed around the league are kind of stuck in their ways. And we're seeing that shift also in college football as well, with the older coaches kind of being pushed out a little bit in the coaching carousel, and these new young up and comers that have been able to adapt with different things like NIL and the transfer portal. So just, I think a younger mind might be the best route to go with this one. And I don't know. I'm really, but I do like your pick of Ken Dorsey as well. He fits that mold of what you'd be looking for. Another guy to keep an eye on that has started getting some tread as far as being requested for interviews is the Giants offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, which is so interesting because I remember watching Mike Kafka at Northwestern.
Right.
I mean, it's like, geez, how old am I?
Right. No, I get that because I feel the same way about him and like Kellen Moore and Byron Leftwich. Like all those guys, I'm like, I remember when Byron Leftwich was at Marshall. I remember,
when he was this, I met him when he was the backup quarterback for the Jaguars.
Yeah. We're getting old, man.
I know. It's just like, geez Louise. But really, I think my two top guys looking like Ken Dorsey would definitely be really good just because of what you've seen him help build in Buffalo, and the growth of oh my God, Allen. What's his first name?
Allen.
Josh Allen. There's too many. I was thinking Jared, but I was like, nope, that's that old defensive end that used to wear number 69.
Yep. Vikings.
But yep. But Ken Dorsey, Shane Steichen, even a Kellen Moore. I don't know why anybody's not really looking at him. I feel like maybe he's more in line to potentially take over for McCarthy down in Dallas eventually. But I don't know.
Yeah,
some of these younger guys are what I'm looking at. And then as far as my quarterback, I want CJ Stroud. To be honest, when I look at what CJ Stroud has been able to do throughout his college career and just this past year alone, everybody will go, well, look, he had a bad game against Northwestern. Yeah, but guess what, guys? The wind was blowing over 50 miles an hour consistently in that game, and it's in Chicago, where it's even windier up there. And yeah, he didn't throw for very many yards that game. He had a terrible game. No, but he rushed. He ran the ball very well. He adapted to the environment. He adapted his game. He switched it up, and he still led the team to a victory. I guess the game against Michigan, he didn't look great, but Ohio State didn't look great all around in that game. It wasn't just him. But then to come out and play the way he did against Georgia, he made Georgia look beatable. And the Georgia we just saw against TCU looked completely unbeatable. I mean, Georgia, majority of the season looked unbeatable. And Ohio State, many people didn't give them a chance. And CJ Stroud really led them in that game. And then he pushed them down the field after Marvin Harrison Jr. went out with the concussion. So I just feel like his grind, his ability to adapt, his accuracy, he's accurate on short passes, intermediate and deep passes. I I feel like he has the tools necessary. Oh, and he can also take off and run. So he kind of is the full package there. I feel like he has the tools to have a more successful career in the NFL than Bryce Young. Bryce Young at times, it this is just my personal opinion, but it felt like he's kind of disappeared in games. If anybody wants to disagree with that, fine. Tell please tell me where I might be missing where in that assessment. Um, and that also might be because I didn't watch as much Alabama as I did Ohio State. But just from seeing different, like how Alabama played this year, he didn't really seem to step up to me as that leader when Alabama needed a leader. As the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, you would expect him to really, when Alabama hit that a little bit of a rough patch and lost a couple of games, he should have stepped up. Now it looked like he probably did in the bowl game. He showed great leadership by saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to declare for the draft, but I'm not opting out. I'm going to play." So you have that. But I think if I had to pick a quarterback that I would feel the most comfortable with handing the keys over to right now, it would be CJ Stroud. I am not drafting Will Levis. Will Levis is one of those guys to me that he's going to go to the combine and he's going to perform at high levels at the combine. But he's good in combine measurables and all of that. But when it comes to actual game, yeah, he was okay. He was good. He was. But you got to look at their offense. It was a very run-oriented offense. And down the stretch, he had trouble with interceptions. And that would be the time where you're like, look, you should be improving as the season goes on, getting into more of a rhythm with your wide receivers. He looked to be very struggling. Once the competition, I should say, once the competition increased, Will Levis's accuracy and trouble with turnovers all kind of like his accuracy went down and his trouble with turnovers rose, and it came to a head. So I'm not as a big a fan of him. And I don't understand the talk of Anthony Richardson either. He's an athlete, but I think people are more talking about Anthony Richardson because when the Colts were originally kind of hovering around that, are they going to be in the playoffs? Are they not going to be in the playoffs?
He was going to be there like 15 or
there.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But let's not even put him in the conversation now for a top 4 pick.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think the Colts have to trade up. I don't know.
I'm just scary because like there's a team like Carolina's got a lot of draft capital and they can we'll get into it more as the draft gets closer, but like there's a lot that I saw of that from like what Carolina has where where they can move up and like because I mean yes, Sam Darnold played better towards the end of the year. Yes, they just drafted Matt Corral last year, but like at the same time, if they've got an opportunity to trade up with the Bears or the Cardinals to potentially get that next pick, then I think they could potentially go for it. So I mean, like all the teams.
If that happens, I guess if that happens, I mean, maybe you suck for one more year and then you try to get Caleb Williams next year.
Yeah.
But if that happens, look, there are still players around there that the Colts really need help with. Like a guy like a Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern would be a huge help on the offensive line. So, I mean, I'm just saying there are other options there if the Colts for some reason every team in front of them like the Bears and like if they missed out on the top 2 quarterbacks, I'm not gonna or maybe at that point, maybe if you do like Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, you just trade back
with
as
Carolina.
well and you pick up more picks as at that point. But I mean, a Peter Skoronski is not a bad consolation prize whatsoever.
No. Look, and it'll one last thing, and you said something potentially controversial. I'm going to take the onus away from you, so the comment section can pick on me for saying this. Look, I'd rather the Colts take a flyer on Stetson Bennett in a later round, then take Will
I even said
Levis.
that off air. I
Because
said that off air.
the reason I say that is because I think it's funny to me that a quarterback can play surrounded by NFL caliber talent and play against NFL caliber talent in the SEC and against Ohio State in the playoff, and all of a sudden, like, I get obviously those kids aren't in the NFL, but then to then say, well, that guy is at best a backup is always crazy to me, especially with all the success that he's had.
It's because he doesn't have the measurables that everybody just screams and
right.
shouts about.
So
Again, it comes back to,
if the Colts were to
can a quarterback win?
right. And if the Colts get a guy, heck, I'm okay with, offensive coordinator for the Lions, the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, even, who were around Goff and Hurts this year. Or if they get Dorsey or Callahan or Bieniemy or whoever, I would rather have, Dorsey and, I would rather have Dorsey and Bennett than Dorsey
Oh my
and
gosh, that would be, yeah.
and Levitt. You know what I mean? Or Levis. So
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of Will Levis. So we'll see what happens. But
And honestly, are these teams as big of fans of them? I mean, what we see is everybody falls in love with the hot board that Mel Kiper puts out every year, and he lives and dies, it seems like, by those measurables. He's that prototypical. He loves the prototypical quarterback. And it's like, but look, the prototypical quarterback, just because he looks like a prototypical quarterback, doesn't necessarily mean he is a guy that somebody should spend a high draft pick on because of X, Y, and Z reasons. I don't know. I feel like the teams that typically go after those guys that are kind of like, when you look at the tape, you go, huh? And then you're like, oh, the measurables are just off the chart. It's like, those are the teams that are consistently looking for a quarterback. It seems like
yeah.
So like I said, I'm always in the camp of, I would rather have a quarterback that knows how to lead, knows how to win, than a quarterback that stands in the pocket at 6'5", has big hands, and can throw the ball 75 yards from his knees. Okay.
Guess what?
But
If he's down in the NFL, if he's on his knees throwing 70 yards,
right. Can he lead my team to victory? Does he know how to do that? That's why I like CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud has the size. He's got all those intangibles, but he has shown you on tape that he can lead. He can adapt his game to the necessary environment that he is in. He knows how to adjust on the fly. Some of these prototypical quarterbacks, they don't show that. And again, I go back to a quarterback that I always thought was never given a fair chance in Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow had an awkward throwing motion. Okay, who cares? Can he lead your team to victory? Is he a good leader in the locker room? Is he what you want in a quarterback as a person, as a player? Yeah, who cares? He's got a wonky throwing motion. It still gets the ball from point A to point B accurately, right? So I don't know. I can stand on a soapbox all day and scream that, and I don't think anybody's going to listen.
Well, we definitely, this isn't going to be the only time we talk about this subject as the weeks and the months go on and we get closer to the draft, because it will be fun. I am anxiously awaiting our April show where we talk draft picks, because it's gonna be very interesting to see what Colts do. But real quick, let's go ahead and talk about our friends of the show before we get into our wild card predictions. The Crash Course podcast is brought to you by Anchor. Looking to start a podcast but don't know where to start? Look no further than Anchor.fm. Anchor allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer or mobile device, and will distribute it to other sites such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. On a budget, not only is Anchor completely free of charge, but will allow you to make will allow you to make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Anchor, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Also, the Crash Course podcast is brought to you by Eat Lunch and Board Game, heard weekly on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be heard. Board games build bridges. So before we get out of here, we want to give our wild card predictions. First, let's look back at our preseason predictions. For For me, I had
Oh,
5.
mine was bad.
Hey, we were
Mine was
we were
bad.
about the same. I had 5 of the 8 division winners picked correctly. I hit on the Bengals, Bucks, Eagles, Bills, and Chiefs. I missed on the Packers, Colts, and Rams. B. Scott, you had 4 of 8 division winners picked correctly. You hit on. Oh, sorry, my Super Bowl prediction was the Bills over the Rams. So at least my winner is still is still in the play. B. Scott, you picked 4 of 8 division winners correctly, hitting on the Bengals, Bills, Eagles, and Chiefs, missing on the Packers, Colts, Rams. The only one that I want to give you a little bit of crap for is the Saints, because that was the one that I think of all of the ones we missed on. That's one preseason that was, I think. But also though, you went out on a limb too. You went against the grain. A lot of people,
But that was also the division nobody wanted to win.
right, exactly. Um,
So
and your Super Bowl prediction was the Chiefs over the Rams. So wild card weekend is upon us, and we've got over. We'll start with the AFC first. The Chiefs are the number 1 seed, so they are off for wild card weekend. They advance to the divisional round. The Bills are the number 2 seed. They will play the Dolphins at number 7. The 3 seed is Cincinnati. They will play the 6 seeded Baltimore Ravens, and the Jacksonville Jaguars win the AFC South. They will play the LA Chargers, who are the 5 seed. So we'll do our predictions. I'll do.
why is it to me that anytime the Jaguars win the division, the AFC South, or make the playoffs, it just kind of puts a smile on your face.
Yeah,
Like, good for them.
which is funny.
Like, I think it's because they're one of those teams that they've been down so much that when they have success, you're just like, I can't help but be happy for
Well,
them.
because back in the day when they had like David Garrard, Mark Brunell, Byron Leftwich, they were a thorn in the side of the Colts, and you didn't like them for
They
whatever.
still are.
Right? Yeah. They are in some respects for sure.
Have they ever? Maurice Jones-Drew.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
But there was then a long time after that where they had the Blaine Gabberts of the world and Blake Bortles for every year except for one. Where they just weren't very good, and so
Hey, Blake Bortles, wasn't it Blake Bortles that led them to the AFC Championship
against the Patriots. That
the
was
Patriots?
the last time they
Yeah.
were in the playoffs. Because I'm with you. I was rooting for the Jaguars when they were playing the Titans. Like I've grown because the Titans have been so good, or at least dominated the division as of late. I've kind of grown from being I don't really care about anybody in the Colts division. I don't hate anybody to if there's one team I could pick to hate, it's probably the Titans. And so I was like, even with that, I was like, okay, I still want the Jaguars to win because they just hardly. It seems like they hardly ever get here. They've had such a topsy-turvy season where, they get their doors blown off by one team, but then they go out and beat the Chargers 38-10 in the regular season. They beat the Cowboys and they beat the Ravens. It's been a roller coaster ride for them, so I'm glad to see them in it. But my predictions on the AFC side, I'm gonna go with the Bills in the 2-7 against the Miami Dolphins. The Bills are second in points per game and yards per game on offense. They're second in points allowed per game on the defensive side. Josh Allen is tied for second in touchdown passes with 35. The Dolphins lost 5 in a row, including a game against the Bills, before winning an ugly game versus the Jets with their third-string quarterback to clinch the playoff spot. Tua has been in concussion protocol since Christmas, but even if he plays, I don't have a whole lot of faith in Miami, so I'm going with the Bills. As far as the Bengals and the Ravens, I'm going with the Bengals. It's another game where the visiting quarterback is in question. Lamar Jackson has been sidelined since early December. He might play, but even if he does, the big question will be, is he going to be at 100%? Kind of like the same with Derrick Henry last year in the game against Cincinnati. We weren't quite sure what we'd see out of him. And that's going to be the same case if Lamar Jackson were to play. Joe Burrow is the one tied with Josh Allen with 35 touchdown passes. It's a Bengals team that's top 10 in points per game and yards per game offensively. The Ravens are top 3 in points allowed per game on defense, so they can hang around, but I still like Cincy to get the win. And then in the Jaguars and the Chargers, both the Jaguars and Chargers are similar offensively. They're around 360 yards per game, 24 points per game. Trevor Lawrence is 10th in QBR. Herbert is 12th. Each team is getting hot at the right time, so I'm just going to go with my heart here. I want to see the Jags win. I think it would be really cool for them to get that playoff win over the Chargers, so I'm going with the Jaguars. So give me the Bills, Bengals, and Jaguars. I know it's all chalk, but honestly, with the Jaguars, it doesn't feel like it's all chalk. It still feels like I feel like the Chargers
4-5. It's
right. Yeah, it could go either way, but yeah, I'm going with the Bills, Bengals, and Jags.
perfect. Yeah, I'm going with the Bills over the Dolphins as well. The Dolphins, I feel like, just kind of limped their way into the playoffs. Mostly because the AFC was really kind of down this year outside of the
Which
top
it's
teams.
crazy because we talked at the beginning of the year about how like, oh, there's 14 of 16 teams that are going to be good.
Well, I think because the Denver Broncos
Yeah.
couldn't, you know, Russell Wilson still has more bathrooms in his house and he's thrown for touchdowns this year. Um, I don't know if that's
No,
accurate. That's just
he finally surpassed it in like the
oh,
last
he
week.
did.
Yeah, and it's funny because uh people like I think it was pardon my take that like picked up the story of the guy who was keeping track of that on TikTok, and they're like, you know what's funny is that he started that at the beginning of the year as like a meme and expected him to get like be done with those videos by like, you know, early
Week
October.
2.
Yeah, and then here he was in early October at the latest, and then here he was in week, 13, week 14, still commenting on it. So yeah, he
Yeah.
finally got it there, but it took way longer than it should have.
And then the Raiders, nobody expected the wheels to completely fall off on that. So there was a lot. I mean, I guess one thing going back to the
Which
picks I missed on what you talked about with the Saints, I don't remember when we recorded that show exactly, but I think at the time Tom Brady was still retired.
no, it was our
Was it?
preseason. It was our preseason. We just didn't know what because it was I think fresh off of Tom Brady being gone for 11 days. Like
Okay.
mysteriously after when he came back, he was gone for 11 days. Which by the way, real quick, Raiders, I know you mentioned the Raiders. We want to on this show, please for the love of God, do not let Derek Carr be the next quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think we talked about that, but like let's just not do that. Please
No.
let's not do that. That's I've seen that and I'm like I that's my biggest fear now is that is that Derek Carr is going
Is
to be
that
the next quarterback.
yeah,
The Colts
please don't.
trade wait, I guess I don't know. The Colts
The
trade
Colts trade the fourth
yeah,
pick of
pick
the NFL draft to
to,
the Raiders,
to get Derek Carr.
Derek Carr. And just to make it even juicier, they've traded Jonathan Taylor with him.
God.
All right, so yeah, I'm going with the Bills over the Dolphins. Like I said, I think the Dolphins kind of limped into the playoffs here. They started, I think, what got them in also is they had a really good hot start to the season and they won games at that point in the juncture. But Tua being concussed, which needs to be totally looked at, and he needs to really consider his future. It's been a rough year for his head, and you don't want to see that. Um, the Bengals and the Ravens, the Bengals are playing really, really good football right now. And they struggled early off in the season. I think they're coming rounding back into form. Um, and with the uncertainty of what we're going to see from Lamar Jackson, and I don't know, I just feel like the Ravens when they get to the playoffs, it's just you can't really count on them. They're not too reliable once they get there. And they just haven't seemed reliable at all recently. It just kind of seems like a franchise that's kind of stuck in limbo, good enough to make the playoffs, but not good enough to have a better pick in the draft to kind of start fixing problems. So I'm going with the Bengals there. And then the Jags and the Chargers. Man, I'm going with the Jags as well, mostly because of everything I just said at the prior to this segment of doesn't it just make you smile when the Jags are in the playoffs? I want to see it continue. And I really do like Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback. I thought I liked watching him play in college. I never thought he was, I mean, he's one of those guys. He's prototypical. He's got the size and everything, but he also knows how to just win games. And that is why we never saw him really as much of like he would be talked about as considered for a Heisman, but he was never truly a Heisman contender. But he just knew how to win games. And that's really a key thing. And we're seeing it now with them. But he's also got that prototypical size. So he's kind of the full package.
Um
So yeah, I'm pretty much going the same as you. Bills, Bengals, Jags.
Hey, we'll see if it happens. The NFC now. The Eagles are the number 1 seed. The 2-7 is the 49ers and the Seahawks. The 3-6 is the Vikings and Giants. And then the 4-5, the NFC South winners, the Tampa Bay Bucks against the number 5 Dallas Cowboys. So my predictions for that, first to the 2-7, give me the 49ers. They're winners of 10 straight. They're fifth in yards per game, sixth in points per game offensively. Christian McCaffrey, no doubt a big reason for that. I mean, that offense, Christian McCaffrey, Debo Samuel, George Kittle. I've I said earlier
I think
that
you could plug any
well,
quarterback
right. I
into
was gonna
that,
say
that
I gave
offense.
D'Amico Ryans like credit for plucking guys from that offensive staff to come over if he were the next Colts head coach. It makes it really easy to plug any quarterback in, like you said, when you've got those weapons around him. Brock Purdy, that story has been sensational. What he's been able to do. And oh yeah, the defense.
I'm not surprised though. Brock Purdy was really good in college.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not surprised one bit.
and look at
but there's another guy, not the prototypical quarterback, so he gets drafted really late.
well,
but,
look what I mean. I know
hey.
Iowa State is by far not like a power, but
Oh no.
the only other quarterback that I can name from Iowa State is Seneca Wallace, and that's just because of that play where he ran 100 yards on a like 10-yard touchdown run. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. Another guy who, I mean, look at what he just all he did was win at Iowa State, and that's about it. But yeah, and by the way, the defense for the 49ers is one of the best, if not the best statistically in the league. Even though Geno Smith has set all kinds of Seahawks passing records this season, some of that shine that Seattle had earlier in the season when we were all like super hyped about how good he looks compared to Russell Wilson has worn off a little bit. So give me the 49ers there. Indy 3-6, give me the G-Men. This is more about not having faith in Minnesota than it is about having a lot of confidence in New York. The Vikings are 3-2 against playoff teams this season with a point differential of -40. Now you could say, Craig, most of that 40 points is the 37-point loss to the Dallas Cowboys at home. But Minnesota has looked bad in some of their bigger games this season. Dominated on Monday Night Football Week 2 against Philly. The Dallas debacle, they were blown out by Green Bay when I'm fairly certain they were still the 2 seed and had a shot at the 1 seed at the time. And they just came out flat. The Giants had the Vikings on the ropes a few weeks ago in Minnesota. The Vikings needed a 61-yard field goal to win, so I'm just going to fade that result. Give me the Giants. Also, not great when the Vikings need the biggest comeback in NFL history to beat the Colts this season out there. And then the Cowboys and the Buccaneers. Both defenses are strong here. The Cowboys are 5th in points allowed per game defensively. The Bucs are top 10 in the league in terms of yards per game. But I think the big story is offensively. The Cowboys are 5th in points per game on the season. Tampa Bay is 25th. I knew they were bad offensively, but I didn't realize just how bad. But I could go either way here, and the reason I could go either way here is because, yes, the Cowboys are the better team, but it is Tom Brady in the playoffs. It's the fact that Tom Brady is undefeated against the Cowboys in his career, including a 19-30 win on opening weekend. It's that the Cowboys haven't won a road playoff game since 1992. It's the fact that they got dominated by the Commanders on the road this past weekend. Now, I will say, I'm going to go with the Cowboys, and I think the reason why is because of everything I just talked about. They're going to have they went into the Commanders game where the story going into their playoff game would have been like, look at this, the Cowboys are by far the better team. But they still have to go on the road to play a under 500 division winner. Everybody would have been in the Cowboys camp as far as winning the game. Now that they've lost to the Commanders, now the storyline shifts to Cowboys can't beat the Buccaneers. They can't beat Tom Brady. They haven't won a road playoff game. I think the pressure has kind of shifted away from them, where not as many people believe in them. I mean, I still think wildly they will be picked and be the favorite, but I think some of that pressure that added pressure that they would have had of like, oh, you're the better team than Tampa. You're the team that should have had the home playoff game, not the Buccaneers. I think some of that pressure is now alleviated from the Cowboys. Not to say that they can play completely loose, but I think that they, have a little bit more bulletin board material to go out and prove some people wrong this weekend. So give me the Cowboys.
So 49ers over Seahawks, that's easy. I mean, I honestly believe the 49ers could win the Super Bowl the way they're playing right now. Nick Bosa playing out of his mind, leading the league with 18.5 sacks. 18.5 sacks. I haven't heard that kind of sack number since Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis lined up opposite each other on a Colts defensive line. I mean, that felt like just common at that point in time. But 18.5, that's a lot. So yeah, 49ers there. I do like the pick of the Giants over the Vikings. The Vikings are struggling right now. They're limping. It's the fact that they started so hot is what carried them to the 2 seed right now, in my opinion. But at the same time, the Giants, you never know what kind of team you're going to get with them. But I do feel like they're a little bit more ready. They're a little bit more consistent right now, whereas the Vikings seem to be just, I don't know. It's just strange how they've the wheels have fallen off there a little bit. As far as the Bucks and the Cowboys go, I'm going with the Bucks, mostly because I feel like Dak has really struggled recently in the past few weeks with his accuracy and has thrown a lot of interceptions. If you give Tom Brady a short field in the playoffs because of turnovers, he's going to capitalize. He knows how to make those types of plays. So I think that is what's going to be the downfall for the Dallas Cowboys in this game, is a crucial pick thrown by Dak Prescott that ends up getting the Bucks into a really good scoring position. I think it could be a close game, but those turnovers will be key. If Dak can keep that under control, then the Cowboys can win that game. There's no reason the Cowboys can't win that game. Look, the Buccaneers are only the 4 seed because somebody had to win the NFC South, and it just so happened to be them. So I'm going with the Bucks though in this one because of the interception issues.
Well, that'll do it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Remember that you can follow us on Twitter at 3C Media Sports, like us on Facebook, 3C Media. Go to our TikTok channel, 3C Media, over there. We've got some videos there where, putting out content. We're going to be kicking the content back into gear there and on YouTube, 3C Media. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, ring the bell. And remember, you can listen to us every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course Podcast. You can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87.
We'll be back next week. We'll be talking about these games and a whole lot more. But until then, have a good one, everybody.